Well, I started my life as a nerd kid, the youngest of six, and I always loved nature and the outdoors, and science and math naturally felt comfortable to me because it was a study and exploration of the natural world. And I loved being out in the woods and collecting bugs and those kinds of things. When I was a little kid, science really gave me that knowledge, that insight into how the world worked. And that led me to mathematics, and that led me to programming. And my first programming class, I was only 12 years old. My math teacher had said, "Why don't you take this class with me?" And I thought, no way, I'm just a kid in a programming class. It was actually an adult education class. And I took the class with him. My mother joined because she was kind of suspicious. And so the three of us took this programming class with a few other adults. And I learned to program Fortran, which is a language that isn't used very much anymore, but it was my first introduction to programming. And what really excited me at that point was that all of my life, I had been judged by what girls can and can't do, by what you're supposed to do if I was raised in the South. So what you're supposed to do if you're a Southern white girl, you're supposed to marry and have kids early, and you're supposed to raise a lot of kids and go to church and be the PTA mom and drive a soccer bus and that kind of stuff. And I wasn't interested in that. That wasn't my path. And when I first sat down in front of a computer and I wrote a program and it worked, it was the first time I felt like in my life that I had been given a fair chance, that I hadn't been judged. The computer didn't care that I was a girl. The computer didn't care that I was 12. The computer didn't care what my race was, that I was freckled. I was a red-haired kid. I'm gray now, but I was a red-haired kid. It didn't care about any of that. It didn't care that I wore glasses. And if I got the programming right, I got the right answer on the computer, it all worked. And that was a huge eye-opening experience for me, because I realized there was an avenue that I had to get away from all the judgment of other people. All of their assumptions about me could be left on the wayside, because I would be judged by how good I could code. And that was really what excited me about programming and what got me going in it to begin with. So that's kind of who I am. It's how I got here. It's how I stay excited about it, knowing that computing is really an equal playing field. If you take the people out of the equation and it's just the computers will work equally well for anyone, as long as you know how to work with the computer. And that's very rare in human life, that you have a judgment-free zone. And so that's kind of who I am, is that kid that was inspired to find a place where I fit, and where I wasn't, like, it didn't make assumptions about me because of my gender or my race or my place of birth, or my parents, or my 6 kids that came in my family along with my military dad. So that was a really huge thing for me. My life today is, and so I do spend a lot of my day hiring people. I think, and this is a gender biased thing, but my biggest professional insight, because it happens to me and I see it happen to other women, is that women are uncomfortable taking risks, and guys are not. Guys are less worried about embarrassing themselves. They're less worried about being wrong. And women are more concerned about that. And so in my own work and in my workplace, it has taken me a long time to learn how to take risks, and to stop the inner voice inside my head that says, "Oh, you shouldn't try that. You're gonna fail. It's never gonna work." I don't know where that voice comes from, but boy, every woman I know has a little bit of that. And so you have to shed that. And you have to also shed the worry about being embarrassed or being wrong. It's okay to be wrong. I mean, I think if we think about other things we learn as we go through life, we learn lessons by making mistakes. And if you ever tried to learn tennis, or you tried to learn any other, challenging sport, you realize that it takes a while to get good at it, and you make a lot of mistakes along the way. And we have to be comfortable with that in other parts of our life as well. It's not just about tennis or any other game where those lessons are valuable. But in a work setting, you're going to have some decisions that are wrong, and actually being able to own that and say, you know what, I took a risk there, and it's okay. I learned from that, and now I know better. And a lot of times, if you've thought it through and you really have the knowledge and the expertise, you're going to take a risk that's right. And the chance that you don't ever take a risk is so bad, because you end up really shortcutting yourself. You've cut your own wings effectively, because you're not giving yourself a chance to explore what you really could do. Because a lot of times you'll have an idea that nobody else has. You'll have an insight that nobody else has. It'll be unique to you because of your job, because of your experience, because of your background. And if you take that risk and offer up your idea, the worst thing that can happen is you're wrong. It's not the worst thing in the world. It actually, you'll learn from that, and you'll pick up and move on, and people will respect you for the fact that you tried and that you learned from your mistake too, if it turns out to be wrong. The best things I've done in my career have been big risks that I've taken, and they've always paid off. I've had a few times when I was wrong, but in the end, I tried again and I got through, and it worked out. So taking risks, I think, is the biggest professional lesson that I could offer to anyone else. And the one that I think is so much more important for women than men, because I think men have a much more comfortable time taking risks. So I don't know how fun it is, but I alluded to this earlier. It is a fun fact to me, at least because this is my field, that there are 2,200, at least this year so far, 2,200 cyber attacks a day. And when we talk about a cyber attack, that's not just getting, somebody getting a phishing email or somebody getting, someone trying to scam them on their phone. A cyber attack is a legitimate, coordinated attempt by an organization to attack another organization, or to attack an individual, but in a way where they're really trying to launch an attack, not just steal some credit card credentials or something like that. And so 2,200 a day means that we have about one every 39 seconds. And so when you think about that, these are businesses and organizations being attacked by largely criminal organizations overseas, sometimes in the United States, but less commonly because we prosecute here. And so companies are looking for people to fill jobs all the time. In the worldwide, the estimate is 3.5 million positions today sit unfilled in cybersecurity worldwide. 3.5 million people that they need in companies around the world for cybersecurity. There's 500,000 open positions in the United States alone. So 500,000 jobs are sitting unoccupied at a time when we're in a pandemic and people are leaving careers in hospitality. We could be pulling those people into cybersecurity. You don't have to have a traditional background to be in cybersecurity. Lots of people make great cybersecurity experts. There are people that I work with that are from healthcare, they're from law enforcement, many different backgrounds. And so those jobs can be filled with bright minds right now. They're ready to be filled. The other thing is just to think about it is there's $6 trillion a year, 6 trillion. And we talk about budgets, the financial budget, and that the federal government is trying to pass some trillion number, right? 6 trillion in losses in businesses a year because of cyber attacks. And they're going to spend $1 trillion. $1 trillion is going to be spent to try and defend against cyber attacks. And so many of the things that we do within cybersecurity are not just about going out and trying to stop the criminals, in action, but actually building systems and building ways to stop them before it ever starts. So as more people move into the field and there's more education and awareness of the field, that will help us have a more secure world. And so that need is great. And I really look forward to having more young women in the field. It is a very diverse field relative to other parts of computer science, which can sometimes feel like a male-dominated world. But in cybersecurity, it is much more equal playing field. It takes lots of different kinds of thinking to make a good cybersecurity expert. You can't think just down one path. You have to think in many different directions at once. And that means diverse voices make for better cybersecurity experts and a better team of experts. So that's my fun fact. So we talked a little bit about how I, got excited about computer programming when I was 12, and how I was really excited about the fact that I felt like I was treated fairly and without judgment by computers and computing. But my path to get here wasn't a straight one. When I was 15, my dad had a mental health crisis, and he was no longer able to support me and my family. My older siblings had all basically gotten out of high school, and they were on into college and on their own. And so I was left with, as the only child, really, minor, left in the household, that was abandoned, literally abandoned by my dad. And I had to figure out what to do. I had no means of support. I wasn't old enough to work yet. I didn't have my driver's license yet. I was lucky enough that my older sister could provide me with a place to live, but she couldn't really provide me with any other support. So I became an emancipated minor. And I went through the whole process of entering college and finishing college on my own. It was a rough road. I had to use lots of resources to scrape together money that I could find. It took me more years than it should have taken me, because I had to work to pay for school. But in the end, I think it made me a stronger person. And one of the things that I loved about computing all the way through is when I went to go get my first job in Silicon Valley, which was a long time ago, I didn't have, a great background. I didn't have a fantastic background, but people that had been my professors that knew that I knew how to code, they vouched for me. And for my first few job offers that I got when I moved to Silicon Valley, my references were still my college professors who taught me how to program. And those people that stood up for me was one woman in computer science that was in my university, and one of my math teachers who had taught me several of my math classes. Those individuals knew what I was capable of, and they were there for me when my parents couldn't be. And I think what you find when you go through crisis, like with my dad, I didn't see my dad for 7 years after that. He was still alive, but I didn't see him from the time I was 15 until the time I was 22. He did walk me down the aisle in my wedding, but it took a long time for us to ever talk to each other again, because having abandoned me, it was not an easy thing for me to accept that a parent would do that to a child. But his crisis was real, and it was significant, and I managed to make it through. I am probably the strongest and most tenacious person that anyone has ever met, because I've been through things that other people can't even imagine getting through. I've been homeless, I've been without food, but now I'm an executive at Microsoft, and I feel like my path here has been the right one. And I feel like I have a lot to offer in terms of my experience in cybersecurity, my experience in computing, and my experience with life. So I try and make sure that the people that I work with know that not everybody around you got to where they are, through an Ivy League education and an upper middle class family, with a second home and a large boat or something like that. That some of us had other paths, and that makes us stronger. And I think right now it's a time when lots of people are in difficult situations, difficult crisis, but we will get through it, and we will be stronger because of it. And I firmly believe that.